everyone. My name is Sarah Gallo. I'm the librarian at the Syrian Cultural Foundation's Ashurbanipal Library. It's my honor to participate in the second Nabu Circle lecture of this year. Before I present our guest speaker for today, I'd like to provide you with some context regarding the purpose behind organizing this lecture series. In ancient Assyria, Nabu, the Lord of Wisdom, was revered by scholars, inspiring a deep love for knowledge. Supported by rulers like Ashurbanipal, a grand library in Nineveh elevated the pursuit of knowledge. This legacy endured, leading to centers of learning like the School of Nisibis, which contributed to the Islamic Golden Age. Despite challenges, Assyrians maintained their love of learning, reflected today in the Nabu Circle lectures by the Assyrian Cultural Foundation, which brings scholars together to share insights on Assyrian history, literature, language, and culture, preserving this civilization's enduring passion for wisdom. Today, we are happy to have Professor Önver Cetrez as our speaker. Professor Cetrez's topic for today's lecture is Ritual and Trauma Among Assyrian Refugees, Existential Questions, Resilience, and Coping. Önver Cetrez is a professor of psychology of religion and cultural psychology at Uppsala University in Sweden. He is known for his research focusing on psychosocial and existential health in the context of migrants and refugees, particularly regarding ethnic and religious identities, resilience, coping, existential health, acculturation, and conflict. Professor Cetrez has been at the forefront of numerous EU and national grants within the broader field of immigration and refugee studies. He served as a co-coordinator for grant agreement preparations of the Horizon Europe project and earlier as the co-coordinator of the Horizon 2020 project called Respond. Additionally, he has contributed significantly to the field as the scientific secretary for the Swedish Ethical Review. Professor Cetrez's lecture explores how life stories often depict adversity, danger, and struggle, but also resilience, heroism, and change, sometimes with the help of a magical force. He shows how resilience can grow from crises. An early example of this is seen in the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is the first known story to portray trauma and resilience in history. Through international projects, he has studied the experiences of Assyrian migrants, their coping mechanisms, expressions of hope, and existential questions about life's meaning and everyday challenges. After the lecture, we invite you to stay updated on the latest news and events of the Assyrian Cultural Foundation by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I'll provide you with links to all our social media platforms in the chat. Now I'd like to pass the floor to Mr. Robert De Calera, who has been a big help in coordinating all these efforts. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sarah, and welcome to Professor Cetrez. We're really honored to have you. Welcome, everyone, here today. I think this is going to be a very, very interesting lecture, and I hope that we can all learn from it. Overcoming is something that really touches deeply into all of our lives, and understanding it from an academic and anthropological, especially anthropological level, would be extremely interesting. We really look forward to it, Professor. Again, we're honored, and we look forward to hearing you.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Sarah, and Shlomo, everyone. Brich Ramsho, we would say maybe in Stockholm, Sweden, but Brich Safro for some of you, and somewhere in between for others. Today, we'll delve into the world of refugees and explore their remarkable resilience in the face of immense challenges they face. And we'll examine the existential concerns they grapple with, the various ways they build resilience, and the significance of societal support in their journey. By the end of this presentation, I hope you'll gain a deeper understanding of the refugee experience and the incredible strength they possess. The global refugee crisis, as you know, is a stark reality, and millions of people worldwide are forced to flee their homes due to war, persecution, and now, more than before, natural disasters. And this map highlights how widespread displacement is. And the human cost of these conflicts is immense, as you know, with countless individuals and families being uprooted from their homes and facing an uncertain future. As we dive deeper into this topic, let's keep these numbers in mind and recognize the human stories and suffering behind these figures. The journey of a refugee is full of hardship. They face physical dangers during their escape, the emotional trauma of displacement, the social isolation of being in a new environment, and so on. And this mother expresses the fear and hopelessness she feels in life, being an Assyrian woman. She says, "I don't feel safe anymore. I belong to an Assyrian minority. We feel threatened by ISIS, who wants to kill us. I'm fed up with this miserable situation we are living in." My research, along with many countless other researchers and studies, has documented the significant emotional toll that displacement takes on refugees. It's anxiety, it's fear, it's depression, just to mention some of the emotional challenges they struggle with. And it's crucial to recognize these challenges and provide refugees with the support they need to heal and rebuild their lives. These effects of trauma among refugees are felt even more concretely on the body, physically in terms of trouble sleeping, feeling tired, low energy, headaches, physical pain, stomach pain. As you see here, and I will come back to our studies, this one from Istanbul in 2014, where we conducted a survey study among the more than 200 participants, almost 200 participants. They would express these physical pain mainly in terms of what I mentioned: sleeplessness, low energy, headaches, and other pain, bodily pain. And not surprisingly, the differences between men and women were significantly different in terms of women showing higher expressions of physical pain. The following slides now, which I will show, are powerful stories I've encountered, collected together with my colleagues in research. And they showcase the emotional feelings, the existential struggles, and the underlying human spirit in face of adversity. And the material represents research from several studies, mainly one in 2014 in Istanbul, where we established a very small refugee center for Assyrians passing through, and other materials from the Iraqi Assyrian refugees arriving in Sweden earlier, back in 2010. Let me start with one of the stories, Sarah's story, and I will ask you to take the time to read this rather than me reading it for you, and I will be quiet for a while. Please read this story by Sarah. Well, if you notice, the first image I showed you was actually a woman at the left, whose hair had turned completely gray, as she says here. Sarah's story exemplifies the emotional turmoil refugees endure and the sudden loss of her husband and the emptiness caused by the lack of a traditional funeral rite robs her of her dignity as a wife. Despite this hardship, Sarah continues her journey, highlighting the spirit of herself and refugees in general in the face of immense loss. Let's now read Seide's story. Please go ahead. And Seide's story sheds light on the existential concerns of freedom. Confined by societal expectations and a restrictive marriage, she yearns for autonomy and the opportunity to shape her own future. Her escape and her determination to build a better life for herself and for her children showcase the resilience of the human spirit. Now, please read Mariam's story as well. Mariam's story explores the existential concerns of faith in the face of trauma. The loss of her parents and the struggles she endures challenge her belief system. And this story emphasizes the complex relationship refugees can have with religion and spirituality after experiencing immense hardship. There are diverse coping mechanisms refugees use. It is prayer, it is hope, finding meaning in family, and maintaining cultural practices, just to mention a few. And these strategies help them navigate the emotional turmoil and existential challenges associated with displacement. Well, psychologists have approached resilience as a characteristic of the individual in a context, an environment, and the complex interaction between people and risk. So resilience is always built on risk. And it is about adaptation in a situation of risk to try new solutions and learn for the future. But resilience is not only a resource that is out there, it is also something that is built up in a constant process of change and becoming. It is a historical experience. It is individually lived, but collectively experienced. It is in the social body, as we've seen in these stories of 3 women. It is symbolic, also as exemplified by the quote here. As Christians, we never feel safe. We are always a target, the victims. They sacrifice us, and it is halal, clean, to kill us. We're always worried about our family and our children. And based on these harsh experiences, the Assyrians have built up their resilience by either being careful, community-oriented, active in the society they live in, and finding a positive balance between ideology and reality, or between the worlds of dream and the worlds of work. There are discussions on the existential, and rather than approaching this mainly philosophically, I will do it with the help of a psychologist, Erwin Yalom, who was a clinical psychologist, and he described the existential conflicts within a person, relating it to the ultimate questions of life, the existential being about death, about freedom, isolation, and meaning, or also meaninglessness, as these two come together. The first one, the fear of death, is a threat to the existence of a group, as something the refugees express. As quoted earlier, we never feel safe because we're always a target. It is halal to kill us. The fear of death is always present in or among the refugees. But there is also a sense of freedom, and it is closely intertwined with responsibility to shape one's own destiny and to shape the future. Responsibility, in turn, is linked to the feeling of existential guilt in achieving one's potentiality, self-realization, or autonomy. And the refugees' responsibility is linked to their children, to their family, group, and to themselves. In many of our interviews, the feeling of guilt emerged, but not only guilt about having abandoned their own goals or opportunities, which we might experience living in the Western countries. It is usually more about abandoning someone, like in the story of Sadie, or leaving someone behind, like in the story of Mariam, or not being able to be there for a funeral ritual, like Sarah. It is also a feeling of having made the wrong choice in life, feelings of failure, or maybe even seen as the failure itself. The third expression of existential is about isolation. Yalom described isolation in three ways. One being the interpersonal, in terms of isolation from other individuals, or lack of closeness, or geographical isolation. The second aspect is the intrapersonal isolation, when the individual doesn't have self-confidence or doesn't see her own potentiality. But the third aspect of isolation is more about existential, is the lack of belonging, not feeling part of something larger. And the two first, the interpersonal and the intrapersonal, when occurring at the same time or together, result in this existential isolation, where the person loses ground and is not able to link one's life situation with the worldview he or she has formed in life. The fourth and final aspect of the existential is the meaning and meaninglessness in life. Meaning can be explained as coherence, that life feels coherent and has a purpose. It is also linked to significance, that our experience and actions have meaning for us. Yalom gives examples of meaning, such as cosmic meaning, meaning as self-realization of one's own potential, but also devotion. And for many refugees, these aspects, and especially the children, or living for the children are strong expressions of meaning. However, the fatality in life from meaning to meaninglessness is also a fact, as expressed by one young Assyrian person. I quote him, "I had motivation," he says. "I had a job, I had a house, a relationship, and was well on the way to start a family. But then came the war and destroyed everything." So these expressions of hope and endurance by a young person reveals the resilience which is maybe characteristics for the larger Assyrian refugee population. And I quote again, the person saying, "Someday I will be in a better situation. This is something I have to endure and handle. Hope is always there. Hope never stops. My belief always helps me and gives me motivation." And let me end by this aspect of linking back to the myth that I am very interested in personally, though it's not my research field. But if we look at the old texts of Gilgamesh, it is actually about a transformation within an individual. If we read the first tablet, it is about the mighty king that walks on the wall of Uruk. He is powerful, he has authority, he has glory, he's a ruler, but he's also arrogant and he's above others. Along the story, we experience his journey, and at the end, in tablet 12, it is said, and I quote, though there are different ways of quoting it, "Let us go up on the wall of Uruk, look upon its foundation, inspect its brickwork, build it not to endure forever." But this aspect is not about the same person. It is another person. He's much more contemplative, reflective, emotional, and introspective. And I think this transformation is exactly what we see with the Syrian refugee community also in these different stories. They are not the same people who started the journey and who end their journey, because they also go through rituals along this journey, which are rituals of mourning, and where they are being transformed. They deal with this extreme stress by being active, taking part, learning with each attempt, and integrating their failure and success into future strategies. And then linking back to that early image I had, they are, during the journey, creating something that they couldn't believe was maybe possible before, as you saw in the beginning. It was a picture of a group of people who didn't know each other from before, but they were all Assyrians coming from Syria, and they would get together as a community, performing a specific ritual of mourning when finding about the death of a close one or of a friend who was maybe part of the journey, without knowing the others. And that created in Istanbul, when I was there, this sense of communitas. Communitas is something more than just community. It is not the community we talk of in everyday life based on the material experience we have, but it is more a symbolic community, something that is just for a period of time, which transforms the individuals through this journey that the refugees experience. Let me end by that, and going back to that image, just to give you an idea of that specific moment and that specific place, which was very, very strong for most of the people taking part. Here you see how they would come together not knowing each other from before, but performing a very simple, specific ritual of mourning when they would find out that somebody had passed by, somebody who could be a relative, a friend.